stop myself getting into too much trouble. And sometimes it's just not going to go your way. So, as I say, I think, yeah, custard weather, cup of tea or something a bit stronger. And, yeah, with my place, it is a, well, I suppose it's as conventional as your sloping 20-metre offset dipole. And that runs from the top of the house. It's not a mast, I've got a small pole at the top that takes me to about 3 or 4 feet above the apex. And it runs down via the balance to the far end of the corner. So I get more or less a straight run at something like 45 degrees. And because you're limited in what you can put up, sometimes I think that takes away some of the frustration, because you know what everything's going to do short of putting up the tower and the beam. You're not going to do much better. And it seems to work okay in its own small way. I tend to run 70-80 watts of CW on HF, and I seem to get out, especially if I want to work, if it's a bit of a pile up. I might need to be patient, but I'll get there eventually. And it seems to do the trick, so I shouldn't complain too much about it. And I do enjoy the HF work, I must admit, even though we're at some sort of minimum, or coming up to it, I guess. So, yeah, it's enough to keep me occupied. G4ELW mobile.
MW00, yeah, I understand what you're saying. The bungalow here has got it in a little bit of land. I've got the front little garden is hardly worth talking about. It's about 15 feet away from the road, so it's a very, very quiet road. And then you've got the two sides of the bungalow and the back that have got a fair amount of grass and a fair distance, so I can stretch the aerial. What it is at a right angle. Half of it goes down one side of the bungalow and the other half goes down across the back of the bungalow, so it's a perfect right angle. If it wasn't for the fact that I'd screwed up with these washers, it worked. When I first put it up, it worked lovely. Perfect, absolutely amazing. It's life, isn't it? So, I tell you what is frustrating, and I'm sorry it is. A lot of the stuff we are getting out of China is crap. You know, I know they make some good stuff, but a lot of this mechanical stuff is absolute junk. You know, the washers I bought were supposed to be stainless steel. Well, it didn't half rust well from MW0 said they are.
G4ELW mobile. Yeah, I know what you mean. My wife says I'm getting like it's a Melbury first, and I sometimes say things like they don't make stuff like they used to, all that sort of stuff. And there is some real rubbish around. I think you have to be quite selective nowadays. What I found interesting when I first got back onto HF, start of this year, I think February, March, I'd done a lot of research on the internet because things have changed so much since I was first on, and people were talking about interference and what have you, and noise from power supplies and TVs. And I think you can overthink things because by the time, sorry, I'm just parking a second. By the time I'd got myself set up, switched on the rig, I was quite convinced I wasn't going to be able to hear a thing, and what have you, and I was going to cause TVI all over the place and come through on everyone's skybox. And I didn't, and I don't suffer too badly from noise, and it's all worked out okay. But I do remember conflicting stories about what sort of feeders to use. There's a chap that writes for Practical Wireless, I can't think of his name, but he does a technical column, talks a lot about aerials, runs his own company down in Dorchester, and he swears blind that you should never ever have coax coming into the house, only ever use twin. And I took that on board, and then I happened to see one of the RSGB videos from a conference they did. It's titled Clean Up Your Shack, and that was by, I think it was GM3 SEK. It's about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour long, and it's very, very interesting, well worth having a look at it. And he took the view that most of the rubbish and noise that comes about through the mains filter, and he talked about how to deal with some of that, and he then turned around and said he wouldn't have anything else other than coax coming into the shack. And you seem to get so many conflicting opinions on it from very well qualified people. I sometimes think, well, someone who's not particularly technical like myself doesn't stand a chance. G4ELW mobile.
From MW007, well, I've got twin feeder feeding the centre of the dipole, because obviously a dipole is a balanced antenna, and if you feed it directly with coax, you're going balance to unbalance. Now, it will work, but you lose a bit. So what I've got is I've got a twin feeder from the aerial down into the radial unit, and then a one-to-one balance that goes to a very small piece of coax that's feeding the radio itself, and that seems to work well. And I've sort of taken the attitude now, having read up for blooming years about this thing, that the best way of feeding an aerial is definitely twin feeder. However, I spent a lot of time in countries all over Africa and places like that, where we have to put HF aerials up to have long distance communication. And every last one of them we fed with coax from MW0ZBR.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's a case of, obviously you need things to match, but which is the less susceptible to noise. Because obviously if it matches well, if it brings a bit more noise, then you end up losing out. And with my setup, it's a 20-metre offset dipole, so I've got a 4-to-1 balance, and I feed that with coax, and it seems to work okay. I wasn't particularly keen about trying to bring twin into the house just through the logistics of drilling holes in the wall and this, that and the other. So I honestly don't know. I think you can only just play around and see what suits you. I have not major problems. I really didn't know what to do about the Earth. I think I may have spoken to you at the time because we're on PME, and it does break a few regulations having a separate RF Earth if it's attached to the case of the equipment and hence to the main. What I ended up doing there probably broke even more regulations. So I did find an article on an ARRL website whereby I've actually used coax to the Earth, and I've taken joined the I'm looking at somebody's car that's close to me. I've joined the inner and outer braiding down at the earth rod, brought the coax back into the earth, and I used the centre feed as the earth cable and put the 0.01 microfarad high voltage capacitor across it. And that works well, and it works well in terms of dealing with noise that's coming up through the main. So I'm actually quite pleased with that, but I just try not to think too much about what the regulations may say. G4ELW mobile.
Understood, MW007. Well, the company you're talking about, the guy there has, I did a lot of work with aerials over the years. If you've got a dipole, people think nominally the impedance at the centre is 50 ohms, which is not. It's nearly, I think it's the official figure is 73. Well, this guy has got some twin feeder which is normally 100 ohms twin feeder, and it's like well, it's hard to describe. It's like a sub-miniature coax, and it's really good. So I use that because I can feed it into the radio room without having to have, you know, normal twin feeder. You'd have to have one hell of a hole in the wall or something. But you just drill a hole and push it through, and it works exceedingly well. And it's also very, very well made. So, you know, you don't find it deteriorating with the weather. So that's what I've used. I've got to be honest, that guy down there, I've had a couple of meets with him, and I don't like him. I'm sorry, I just don't. He's at times got a very, very arrogant attitude. And if you look up the aerial I'm using, which is called the G2DYF, but one of the original ones, if you go on to Ham, or whatever it's called, with the people who write in about it, you've got some really scathing remarks about him and his quality. From MW0ZVR.
Okay, G4ELW mobile. I think I may be fading out somehow. I'm not quite sure how that's happening, but the repeater's getting a bit weaker. Yeah, if we're talking about the same guy, I just read some of the articles in Practical Wireless, and I mean, everyone has their own opinion. But I think you can just, all you can do is take the stuff on board, play around, and come to your own conclusion. But I do know, I think I know what you mean about the attitude. That does come through in the writing sometimes. But as I say, who am I to argue? But, okay, I'm going to make this the final if you don't mind. I'm podcasting home, and it's time to go in and see my mother. In fact, looking at the clock, I may have timed it right. It may have peaked tea time, so the afternoon may get a bit better. But appreciate the conversation. Hope it stops raining. I'm sure it will. And probably bump into you over the weekend or next week. MW0ZVR, G4ELW mobile.
MW0ZVR, okay, yeah, it's the company down in Dorchester, and as I say, I've had a couple of brushes, and well, I just do well alone as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested in the temper tantrums that come out of them at times. And I tend to, over the years that I've been in the plumbing field commercially for 40 years. I've seen every conceivable type of aerial known to man, and I've seen things work. The other thing which I've noticed, and I've said it many times, is that you go to one QDH, put up an aerial, it works perfectly. You take it to another QDH, put the same aerial up, and it don't work well. Back to life, it's the ground plane effect, and you have all sorts of problems. Talk to you again, hopefully over the weekend with a bit of luck. MW0ZVR clear, just monitoring the repeater.
Okay, Barry, yeah, I know what you mean. However, the other side, I guess, is you can't, well, I can't build a rig nowadays. And there's a lot you wouldn't attempt to build, but you can't play around with aerials, you take it to what's left. But that's maybe for another time. Speak to you soon. G4ELW mobile QRT.
Okay, you take care. MW0ZVR listening through the repeater.